Hi, I'm excited to get started with today's webinar, Applying to Get the Interview. Where in previous webinars, we've gone over how to career map and see what fields you might want to go into, as well as an overview as to what to do with resumes and cover letters. Today, we're going to be talking all about the application process. You'll learn about how some jobs use automated systems to help narrow down applicants and what you can do when applying to get the best shot at that interview. Now, before we get started, I wanted to introduce our presenters today, all of whom are a part of our very own training and development team. We're joined today by some familiar voices in our webinar staples, Jenna Gillio, Sarah Snyder, and Dr. Amy Dietzman. So I'll pass it on over to them for them to take it away. Jenna?
Thanks so much, Maxine, for the introduction. Just to reiterate, here's a quick overview of our series. So previously, we kind of laid the foundation by exploring career mapping and beginning the job search as we dissected the resume writing process, while providing some different pointers on nailing that step of the job search. So be sure to check those recordings out on YouTube if you missed them. Now, this month, we're going to be tackling how you can increase your chances of landing the interview. And then next month, we'll be diving deeper into interview basics and tips for success in the interview process and beyond. So we hope you'll join us for that, and we will provide a specific date at the end of today's webinar. Again, my name is Jenna Gillio, and I serve on Tutor.com's team as the training content manager. And for today's webinar, as Maxine said, I'm joined by Sarah Snyder, Director of Training and Process Improvement, and Dr. Amy Dietzman, Senior Director of Learning and Professional Development. If you're jumping in the middle of the series, Amy and Sarah are actually posing as job seekers, and I'm acting as their career coach as they navigate their job search. So we'll chat with them in a few moments, but first let's take a look at our agenda for our mock career advising session today. We'll kick off by discussing the applicant tracking system. What is it, and what can you do to avoid your resume getting screened out? We'll discover how to identify keywords in a job description and use them to tailor your resume. We'll explore other supporting documents an employer may request, including the cover letter. And finally, we'll end with some Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the most important considerations in the application process is the applicant tracking system, or the ATS. The ATS is a computer program that was invented in the late 1990s after the surface of online job boards. As large corporations became inundated with hundreds and even thousands of resumes, the ATS was created as a solution to help employers filter through those applicants. In fact, over 75% of resumes processed by the ATS were filtered out before even reaching the desk of a hiring manager. Now, though the ATS has been used by larger companies historically with the prevalence of online applications, it's also widely used at midsize and even smaller companies today. So, what does that mean for you as a job seeker? Well, it means that it's not sufficient to simply be qualified for a position. You also need to have a resume that's equipped to make it through that gauntlet. This single document has the power to advance or impede your chances at landing an interview. Screen out factors are red flags in your resume, which are likely to eliminate you from that candidate pool. It's critical to be mindful of them and do what you can to minimize their impact. Now, the good news is that screen out factors on your resume are not necessarily going to be screen out factors in an interview. During an interview, you'll have the opportunity to explain and present your work history in a positive light, but that means that you have to get through the screening process and to the interview first. Generally, there are two rounds of screening. The first is done by the ATS, which we just established eliminates approximately 75% of candidates. Resumes that make it through the ATS are then screened with an initial scan from the employer. To increase the chances of your resume making through both rounds of screening, it's important to address any items that are likely to get you screened out. ATS software is customized, so it's important to look through the job posting to determine whether you meet the minimum qualifications. So, for example, if the position requires a master's degree, it's likely something the ATS will be scanning for. However, not all filtering criteria is based on minimum requirements. So there are some other things that you can do to avoid being filtered out. Being unemployed for 27 or more weeks reduces your probability of receiving a job offer by 12.5% compared to being unemployed for just 5 weeks. If you have an unemployment gap within a single calendar year, you could try changing your employment dates from month year format to just years. If you just finished school and you haven't been working during that time, consider developing your education as an experience block to help bridge that gap, and then you can, of course, address it in more detail later in your cover letter. If you've had 2 or more jobs within the same calendar year, you want to select the most relevant of the two and omit the others to avoid any overlapping employment dates. Now, you'll still need to include all of this information in your application, but this will help avoid getting your resume filtered out. If you're worried that your employment at an organization for less than a year may hurt your credibility, you can try listing only years instead of month year dates on your employment block. If you were the owner or founder of a company and you're concerned that employers might think you won't be manageable, try giving yourself a position title instead, something that accurately describes the work that you did and that relates to the job for which you're applying. It's important to remember that mitigating screen out factors should never involve lying about your experience. Rather, the goal is to get you through the filtering process and into an interview where you have the chance to prove that you're the best candidate for the job. The key to successfully mitigating screen out factors in your resume is to use both strategy and honesty. Generally, ATS systems will automatically screen out incomplete applications. So it's imperative that you double and triple check your application to ensure you've completed all required fields prior to submission. You may want to use caution when applying for multiple jobs within a single organization or within organizations that share a parent company. Any contradictory information across your applications may be interpreted as a red flag. So things like your email address, phone number, home address, employment dates should all be consistent. Conflicting personal or employment information can both be screen out factors. Another consideration is whether the positions you're applying for within an organization look scattered. If you're applying for both an administrative assistant position and the head of HR, an employer might wonder why there's such a large disparity in the level of the positions for which you're applying. Many job postings today will list the salary range outright. Now, when this is the case, it's important that you list an amount that falls within that range on the application. If your desired salary does not meet the requirements of the ATS, your application may be screened out. When a salary range is not listed, consider writing something like salary is negotiable or salary may be discussed during the interview process in the desired salary field. And if you're unable to enter text into the field, I'd recommend leaving it blank and adding a note somewhere else on the application, letting the employer know you'd like to discuss salary requirements during the interview process. Mitigating screen out factors is crucial to helping your resume make it through the ATS, but it's only half the battle. If you want to increase your chances at scoring an interview, you must also tailor your resume to the job description, and that starts with the running resume. In our last session, we discussed the benefits of consistently maintaining a running resume of your complete work history. This includes employment, certifications, extracurricular activities, any noteworthy projects, essentially any experience that you have that you might draw from when building your official resume. A running resume helps streamline the process of tailoring your resume to specific jobs. Depending on the position you're applying for, you can then hand select the skills and experiences most relevant to the role and omit the ones that are not. So, turning to my job seekers, Amy and Sarah, why don't you share what you've included in your running resumes so far? And we'll start with Amy.
Okay. Hi, Jenna. Here are my bullet points. I worked really hard when I was writing these to ensure that I highlighted my transferable skills, like you told me to do, and my experience as a hostess.
Awesome. Yes, I can see that. Looks like you've highlighted customer service skills, event planning, which we know is important because you're looking at event planning positions, teamwork with your peers, and some organizational and problem solving skills related to reservations and the restaurant environment. So, great job there. Sarah, let's take a look at your running resume.
So I gave some thought to the other things that I've done in my current position besides the things we looked at in our last session, and I came up with this more comprehensive list of bullets.
Awesome. This is a great list. I see a lot of emphasis on different aspects of your work with data, your attention to detail, and your collaboration and coordination with others. I know you haven't had a ton of creative experience in this role, but if you're going to be looking at more creativity-centric job postings, you might want to add any elements of your job that highlight your ability to be creative, even if it's creative report design or presentation skills, because those will show a more creative mindset in addition to having a data-driven personality.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because this is a data-centric job. Most of what I have experience in is data. But I can definitely be thinking about ways to pull in my creativity more. Thank you for that suggestion.
Of course, you're welcome. So we'll come back to your running resumes in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the importance of using keywords. Keywords are words mentioned in a job posting, typically as required or preferred skills, certifications, or experience. These are items employers view as their top priority, so it's imperative to showcase them throughout your resume. To identify keywords in a job posting, keep an eye out for any standout skills, especially those that are included more than once, or those that are listed as required. In many cases, the ATS filters resumes by scoring how well an applicant's resume aligns with the priorities or keywords set by the employer. So, for example, if Excel proficiency is repeated multiple times throughout a job posting, or if it's listed as one of the required skills, it's safe to assume Excel proficiency is going to be a key factor in your resume's score and thus crucial experience for you to have on your resume. Some ATS systems calculate and rate your experience based on the number of times a particular word appears in your resume. So if you have ample experience in a particular skill, it's a good idea to list that experience more than once throughout your resume. For example, if you're an expert in Python and you've worked with Python in 3 different roles, make sure you reiterate Python as a skill in each of those experience blocks. You want your resume to include as many keywords as possible, but I would caution against what's called keyword stuffing. You don't want your resume to look like you simply scanned the job posting for keywords and then haphazardly threw them into your resume just for the sake of making it through the ATS. Keywords should instead be placed carefully throughout your resume with intention. While using keywords can increase the chances of your resume making it through the ATS, they can also be used to help you personally evaluate whether you're qualified for a particular role. If a job posting lists key skills that you know you don't have, it may not be a good fit for you, and that's okay. Some job search platforms, like Indeed, will actually help you with this. Before you apply, you'll receive a notification letting you know you may be missing a requirement for the position. And other platforms like LinkedIn will actually give you job suggestions based on the skills that you have listed on your profile. Let's practice identifying keywords together using real-world examples. Amy, you have expressed interest in this role as a meeting planner. You'll notice the first part of most job descriptions includes a list of duties and responsibilities. The second part is typically a bulleted list of skills or required qualifications for the position. So, based on the duties and responsibilities, Amy, what keywords can you identify here to help us determine what we should pull from your running resume?
Okay, I'm seeing the words event execution, and then I also see communicated to stakeholders, maybe build registration.
Yeah, I would agree. Those seem to be important for this particular role. What other keywords from this job description stand out?
Well, I see something about sponsorship managers. That's really specific. I've never done anything like that. But then I also see the words budgets, expenses, and financials. And I have done that, but I don't have it on my resume because I wasn't really like directly responsible for it, but maybe I can still add it.
Yeah, I think you definitely still can. Sponsorship managers is pretty specific, so it's okay if you don't have that experience because you do have experience communicating to stakeholders throughout the meeting planning process. How about the position requirements or skills section of the job description? Is there anything that you see here that stands out?
Yes, I do see a lot of keywords here. I see multitasking, managing multiple projects at once. Then I see excellent written, speaking, and presentation skills, self starter, and also Microsoft Suites. That seems like that's a keyword.
Excellent. So now we need to compare these keywords with your running resume bullets to identify what you should include in your resume for the role.
Okay.
So here's your running resume. Do you see any bullets that you think you could include based on the keywords that we just pulled out?
I think I should include my bullet point on assisted with coordinating special events, and then my bullet point on contributing to event planning.
I would agree. We can also customize these bullets to highlight those keywords just a little bit more. I also see that you have a bullet about exceptional customer service, where you mention some of your communication and problem-solving competencies. That could also be helpful to include, though this position doesn't seem to have a customer-facing component, so you might need to reword that one just a little bit.
Okay, yes. I also noticed that I have a bullet about managing guest reservations. I wonder if that might be similar to the job description, how it talks about build registrations. Maybe registration and reservations are similar. And I wonder if my bullet about last minute changes and flexibility might align to the other section on the job posting about multitasking and fast paced environments and managing multiple projects at once. I think I could rewrite that one a little bit with some of those keywords.
Yeah, I think you're spot on here. So we've selected several of your bullets that we're going to pull over into your resume for this job. Our next step is going to be to focus on the keywords that aren't anywhere on your resume to see if we need to add or maybe rewrite some of your bullets. We don't want to make anything up, but we do want to take a look at reframing what you've done. So let's take a closer look. You said you did have some experience with budget and financials as well as negotiating. So tell me how you did that.
Yes, I didn't lead the efforts, but I did work with my manager on the budgets for events, and we did negotiate contracts with customers and additional vendors.
Excellent. So where do you think that we could add something about that to your list of bullets?
I think I can add it into my bullet about coordinating special events. I can add it to the part about collaborating with management, maybe. How about this? I added collaborating with management to negotiate contracts with vendors and assist in budgeting to ensure seamless event execution.
I think that looks good. Let's also strengthen your word choice here so we can emphasize your ability to lead the event planning process. Let's remove assisted with before coordinating. It makes your contribution seem more impactful without really changing what you've already written. Now, in this bullet about customer service, let's add something about communicating with stakeholders, since those are some other keywords from the job description.
Okay, how about this? I took out the part about customer service and then I replaced it with event execution, communications with stakeholders, and problem solving.
Great job. I think we've made a lot of progress here. So do you think you can continue to work this a little more out on your own?
I think I can.
Awesome. Great job. So Sarah, let's talk about your job description and your running resume.
So this comes from a job posting for an entry-level creative assistant with focus on marketing materials and email campaigns. Quite the job title. What I liked about this role is its combination of what I have a proven track record in, which is data, and what I would love to move into, which is more of creative design.
I agree. This looks like it would be a great fit for you. So let's see what keywords we can pull out to emphasize in your resume bullets. What stands out to you?
Two things especially jump out at me in the first bullet of the responsibilities. So this person will do a lot of collaborating with the marketing team, and this person will use tools like Canva. Those feel like solid keywords from this responsibilities section.
Great finds. Let's look at the requirements and qualifications section. What do you see here?
It seems highly likely that they use Canva since it's mentioned again here, so that stands out. I also see things that are definitely me, like strong attention to detail, having a creative mindset, and having the drive and initiative needed to get the job done.
Excellent. We'll definitely want to highlight those then. Is there anything else that you see?
Well, in the preferred qualifications section, they want someone with knowledge of email marketing principles and best practices. It seems to me that anything in a preferred qualifications section would be an important keyword to highlight if you have that experience, right?
Absolutely. Those are some of the things that can help you stand out. So if that's part of your background, let's flag that keyword too. Great job identifying the important things to include here. Now that we've identified some of the keywords from the job description, let's cater your resume bullets specifically to them. Do any of your bullets jump out at you that we could customize for this job posting?
I have this bullet here that's about marketing strategy implementation. It was actually several different channels, including email. So I think if I were to specify email marketing, that would help to align to one of the keywords we pulled out. So how about this?
Great. That's a simple one-word fix that increases the specificity of your statement while also more closely aligning with their expectations. What else?
I have one about accuracy that I think I could tweak. This one could be enhanced by maybe including detail and email again. So maybe something like this.
I think you're getting closer. Because the key word is attention to detail, I think we should use that exact phrase here, even though you already have it in another bullet. There are two different areas where you're exhibiting attention to detail. What about changing it around a little bit more like this? Here, we've front-loaded the attention to detail and added the detail about email marketing campaigns.
Love it. I have a question about one of the other keywords that we identified. It's fairly clear that they must use Canva and they're looking for someone who already knows it. I taught myself how to use Canva just because I wanted to, and I've used it for some personal projects, but I've never used it at work because it's just not part of my role. How should I call attention to my skills without falsifying my resume by making it look like I used it at work when I didn't?
This is a great question. Now, in our last session, I told you any skill is a good skill. So if you feel confident in your ability to use Canva, I do think it's worth including. Since your experience with this particular skill is unrelated to your work history, I'd recommend including it in your additional skills and experience section and in your cover letter.
Great, thank you. I can definitely do that.
Now, in addition to your resume, a job application may require you to submit additional documentation. Supporting documents provide information to employers in addition to what's already included in your resume. Here are some examples of supporting documents an employer may request. Things like a cover letter, transcripts, a portfolio, or letters of recommendation. The information that is required varies depending on the job and the employer's hiring requirements. Generally, a job posting will specify which documents the employer would like you to include with your application. If not, you can always email the hiring manager or HR representative and ask what kind of supporting documentation they're looking for. Be sure to follow any instructions about what documentation to send and how they prefer you send it. For example, official transcripts are usually sent directly from the school or institution. Though job recruiters or employers may not always ask for supporting documents, it's a good idea to compile them so that you can have them at the ready should you need to submit one. And speaking of supporting documents, in our last session, we discussed the importance and purpose of cover letters. So to recap, the purpose of a cover letter is to enhance and expand upon the content of your resume. Including a cover letter provides you the opportunity to address any concerns an employer might have about your resume, any gaps in employment, positions you held for a short period of time, etc. A well-done cover letter communicates to an employer your enthusiasm for the role and demonstrates that you're a candidate worth interviewing. Much like resumes, cover letters are not one size fits all. To optimize your chances of landing an interview, you'll need to customize and tailor your cover letter to each job you apply for. This can be tedious work, so let's discuss how to streamline this process and set yourself up for success. First, you want to prepare a general cover letter template, formatted and ready to go. We outlined how to format your cover letter at our last session. So to recap, cover letters should use standard margins, and they should be confined to a single page, with 3 paragraphs being the most ideal length. Though the majority of your cover letter should be written in paragraph form, it is acceptable to include bullet points in your cover letter if you have a specific list of skills or qualifications that you'd like to highlight, but no more than 3 to 5. So Amy and Sarah, why don't you share the cover letter templates that you found?
All right, so here's the cover letter that I wrote. I'm pretty happy with it. I think I might need to tweak it just a little bit for that job posting that we were just talking about, though, right?
Yes, that's right. This is a really good start. Once you have your template ready to go, you'll want to tailor your cover letter to each position you're applying for. The first step is easy. For each role, you'll simply change your goal title and the name of the employer to reflect the appropriate position. So, for example, if I were applying for an operations specialist role at Tutor.com, my opening sentence might sound something like this. I'm excited about the opportunity to join Tutor.com as your new operations specialist.
Oh, okay, I see. So to tailor my cover letter to the job description we looked at earlier, then my opening sentence would say something like, I am writing to apply for the meeting planner position at American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials.
Yes, exactly. And what about you, Sarah?
I chose a template that uses a bullet list in it. So my thought is that I could customize this template from job posting to job posting based on which one I'm applying to.
I think this looks like a great starting point. Beyond the customizations for the position title, you might want to customize not just the contents of your bullets, but their titles as well. That would be a really great way to incorporate some of those keywords that we just talked about.
That makes complete sense. I can use those to draw attention to what sets me apart. Great.
Earlier, we discussed how to identify keywords in a job description and use them to tailor your resume. Now let's talk about how you can leverage those same keywords to build a standout cover letter. In the body of your cover letter, where you describe your background and career goals, you'll want to adjust your wording to match the requirements listed in a job posting. If the employer is looking for an experienced marketing manager, be sure to include that verbiage. If they're seeking a data analyst expert, apply that term to yourself. And be sure to use the exact term in case the employer is using an ATS system to scan for it. Pay attention to the required and preferred skills listed. Is the employer looking for someone with HTML proficiency or extensive experience with Microsoft Excel? Do they need someone who can speak conversational French? If the job posting mentions a particular skill that you possess, it's important that you mention your expertise in that skill in your cover letter. The same is true for relevant achievements and experience. Be sure to include the details of your background and experience that are likely to hold the most weight with this particular employer and remove any irrelevant information. And remember, employers feel a sense of pride in their company, and they're looking for employees who do too. Be sure to incorporate company-specific language throughout your cover letter, especially if it's included in the job posting. This demonstrates to employers that you're not just desperately looking for any job, but that you're actively interested in working for them specifically and that you've done your research. let's go over how you tailored the cover letter templates you shared earlier to the job description. And we'll start with you, Amy.
Okay, I picked out some keywords from the job description and I added them into a few different areas of my cover letter. I pulled these words from the second half of the job description where it listed required skills, and then I highlighted them here so you could see them. I added strong communication skills, attention to detail, self starting capabilities, and excellent presentation skills. And I even found the name of the hiring manager through a search on LinkedIn. What do you think?
Great work. I like how you added a little bit about the company's commitments because it shows that you've done your research. I do see one area you might consider fleshing out a bit more, and that's in the first paragraph where you mentioned that you're excited to contribute to the company's mission. Perhaps you can include a couple words or phrases here to show that you researched their mission. You can usually find this on the company's website.
Oh, okay. I'll do that next.
Awesome. Great work, Amy. And what progress have you made, Sarah?
So here's the cover letter that I customized for the creative assistant position that I was looking at. What do you think?
I think this looks great. I see some of those other keywords that we didn't discuss showing up here. Things like creative mindset and their phrasing for multitasking. This is a great place to talk about your skills with Canva that can't be tied directly back to any specific part of your job history. Now, as I mentioned to Amy, it can be beneficial to draw on information about the company or the role not listed in the job posting as well. You may want to do some more research and pull in things that you can find about their mission statement or what they stand for. This demonstrates both enthusiasm and initiative to prospective employers.
Yes, that would be great to include here. I can see that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Reflecting on what we've covered today about customizing your resumes and cover letters to individual job postings, what final questions do you have for me? We'll start with Amy.
Okay, customizing my resume and cover letter for every job takes such a long time. Do I really have to customize my resume and cover letter for every single job I apply for? Or is there ever a time when I don't have to do that?
Great question. In my opinion, it's always a good idea to tailor your resume and cover letter. At the bare minimum, you should always change the title of the position for which you're applying and the person you're addressing in a cover letter. If you're applying for multiple positions within the same field, you may not need to tailor them as much, but the keywords for each job posting are going to vary, and thus the ATS is going to be scanning for different things. While it's true that not every job posting utilizes the ATS, there's no way of knowing that for sure, so it's a good idea to cover your bases. You're right in saying that it takes time to customize your resume and cover letter, but I think you could argue that intentionally tailoring these documents for a smaller handful of positions might actually yield better and even quicker results than just serial applying with an identical resume and hoping for the best. What about you, Sarah? What questions do you have?
I just have one lingering question. I had mentioned that I taught myself Canva, and we talked a little about including that in my resume and cover letter and how to do that. I'm curious, though, whether it is appropriate to highlight that I taught it to myself just because I wanted to. And if so, how do I do that effectively and make it believable that I have this skill that I've never used in a professional setting?
Another great question. On one hand, highlighting to prospective employers that you took it upon yourself to master a new skill can demonstrate initiative and tenacity. However, you need to be prepared to back up your claim with evidence. Does the employer ask for a portfolio or a sample project in the job description? Be ready to share examples of your work that you've created using Canva that showcase your skill level. Even if the work you share is unrelated to your employment experience, it can still highlight your familiarity and ability to use the tool. And if you really want to give yourself a leg up, you might also consider obtaining an online certification. There are tons of e-learning companies that offer courses and certifications in high-demand skills and tools like Canva. Udemy and Coursera are both popular choices, but there are countless options depending on your budget and what you want to learn. You might also check with your local library and ask whether they partner with any e-learning companies. You might already have access to one for free. And if you do opt to obtain a certification, You can list on your resume that not only are you proficient in Canva, but you're also certified by a verified program. Thank you to Amy and Sarah for your questions, and that wraps up today's webinar. We hope you'll join us for the final installment of the series on June 18th, where Amy and Sarah will be tackling the interview and what comes after that. So I'll turn it over to Maxine to open it up for some Q&A. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for the great webinar. Before we do get to questions, I did just want to highlight a couple of things. One, please be sure to follow us on our socials. That way, anytime we have any other webinars, you'll be able to find that information easily and then join us and see what other events we have going on. Additionally, just because I know it's a hot question often, this was recorded. So if you joined in late, you will still be able to review everything that we went over today. Now, we do have one question that came in, and it may have been something that you covered earlier, but regarding the resume and cover letter, is there such thing as having too many keywords in your resume or cover letter? And is that something that the ATS systems are looking at?
That's a great question. I can take that one, Maxine. As Jenna mentioned, there is keyword stuffing, which is taking all the keywords and kind of cramming them in every which way, everywhere that you can fit them into your resume so that it has, a multitude of matches to the job description. And typically that's not a great idea because it ends up looking like confusion. Like, what are you actually saying here? It just looks like you used this word 13 times to use this word 13 times. So it's better to really target where you're going to put those keywords so that it still makes sense.
Awesome. And then similarly, do you recommend using a skill section on your resume to highlight keywords in addition to including those keywords in the job bullet points that you're using?
I think that might vary from one position to the other, but especially in a technical position, I think it would be really good to have a skills section where you're listing out skills that you have in technologies that they are going to care about. So they don't have to weed through your job history to find out if you have those skills, but things that are more your soft skills, if you will, like communication and attention to detail. Your skills section might look like everyone else's skills section if you start listing things out like that and everybody puts it in there because they want to look like that. It'd be better if you could incorporate those into your work history to say, this is how I demonstrated that I have this skill.
Awesome.
Also, I want to add one point to that is that my character in this webinar series doesn't have a lot of job history. So the skills section may come in handy to show that I can do a lot of things, even though I only worked as a hostess, quote unquote. So sometimes that's another reason why you might want to use the skills section.
Yes.
Regarding resumes, we did get a question coming in asking about graphics on resumes and if that's a good thing to do with the ATS systems.
That's a great question. Graphics on your resume are going to make it look amazing, but the ATS doesn't care what it looks like. And frankly, the human who's eventually going to look at it after it makes it through the ATS, if it does, doesn't really care what it looks like. Amy and I work with Tutor.com to review resumes for a lot of the hires that we make for our team. And we have seen hundreds of resumes. And the more graphic they are, the more distracting it really is from what you're actually trying to say. So I would say from the perspective of both the ATS and just tell me what I need to know, a graphic resume is not likely going to be your best bet. An exception to that might be one where you're applying for a position where your ability to make things graphically pleasing is key. Then you might want to be able to demonstrate that on your resume, but I kind of play that by ear.
Awesome. The next question may be a little bit more difficult, but someone says that they sent in a resume and noticed that it had a mistake on it after the fact. Is it worth hunting down someone at the company to send in a corrected resume, or should they just consider that job a loss and keep looking?
I love this question. I have seen a lot of resumes with mistakes, and I have never had someone try to submit a corrected resume. It's it's interesting that you would be desiring to do that. You certainly couldn't hurt, but I think you have to consider what your time is worth to you. And if this is the only job you've applied to with that error, then maybe fix it and continue on with the corrected resume elsewhere. But I think that's a personal opinion. Is this job really that important to me that I want to spend the time to hunt someone down or not?
Another question that's come in kind of has to do with, let's see, kind of having a lot of experience that isn't related to your major, maybe something that you went to school for. Would that be something that could affect your application when applying to a specific position? Um, do you see that being an issue?
I can
That's a
take that one.
Yeah, that's a
Oh,
good question. Go ahead, Amy.
yeah, it is. I'll start, and then Sarah, you might have to add something to what I say, but it's a good question, and I don't think it reduces your chances of getting accepted at all. I think it's showing that you're well rounded, but again, you want to highlight your transferable skills based on what it is you're applying for. So if you're applying for something that is, so far from all these other things that you have done, it may be completely irrelevant, but can you find transferable skills within those things you've done and say, hey, I did this over here and I learned this, this, and this, and it totally relates to this job posting, then it's all going to come together. But you just have to be really careful that you're not just putting a bunch of irrelevant stuff on there and then making your resume super long, and then the person's never going to scan through a super long resume anyway. So you still want to keep your resume succinct, I guess is what I'm saying. Sarah, what do you think?
I I'm interpreting it to have more of a focus on comparing your education to your work experience.
Mm,
So going from that direction, I would say that depending on how much work experience you have, the more work experience you have, the less relevant it typically is what your degree was in, just that you have one. If you are very starting out, like Amy's character, for example, is brand new to the workforce beyond I worked here during college, it's probably more important, or not more important, but more impactful to what am I trying to say? To to align your degree with the jobs that you're looking for, because you don't have a lot of experience to suggest that you know things beyond what's in your degree, if that makes sense.
mm,
But once you get further on, I think that it really is true that a lot of employers just want to see that you have a degree and they aren't as concerned with what it is. An example of that, my husband has a degree in mechanical engineering. He has never once in his life had a mechanical engineering job. He is an actuarial software engineer. So having the degree got him in the door at some place, and he's doing completely other things, if that helps.
Yeah, and I think we have time for one more question. And someone asked, when you don't have a ton of experience, can you share things like childcare that show responsibility, dedication, creativity, or how would you handle those situations?
I'm assuming this means that this was a job in childcare, like you were a nanny or your babysitter or something like that.
That's a great question. The way I was reading it was kind of maybe there's a gap in the career. Maybe they took a couple years off to be a stay-at-home parent. If they can use that as kind of a filler in their resume. But let's see. Oh, they clarified yes, like a nanny.
mm,
Okay. In
mhm.
that case, I would say you can definitely make an employment block out of that and be creative with the things that you're including. As a nanny, you are responsible for far more than just keeping those children alive. There are so many things that go into being a nanny that can show, like you said, responsibility, dedication, creativity, structure. I think you could totally do that and just build out those bullets in such a way that it shows the things that you've done. Good time management, creative planning, responsibility, all that stuff. I would
It's all
absolutely
transferable.
do that. Yes.
Hmm.
All right. It doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in. So I did really want to just quickly thank you, Sarah, Amy, and Jenna, for your time today and for answering all these questions that we've had come in. And again, just as a reminder, everybody, next month we are going to have the final webinar in this series. There will be some information about that in the follow-up email that will include the recording to today's session. But thank you all so much for joining today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.